majestically and kicks the goal. Making something out of nothing.
Malchesky, is that the grand final?
Jimmy Bartell can make a hero of himself.
That is a brilliant snap. He's kicked the goal and Freeman to win it after the siren. What a game of football at the MCG.
Welcome to the Protected Zone, where we analyse all the important issues in the AFL and some of the left field topics that you won't find anywhere else. You can subscribe to us on iTunes or find us on SoundCloud, YouTube, or listen on our website, theprotectedzone.com. This week in this great podcast, we'll have a look at what happened in round 18.
Yes, that round, Alastair Clarkson coached his 300th games for Hawthorn. And it doesn't happen very often, so we discuss what makes a great coach.
Cricket and the AFL. Why did some players choose cricket but then go back to the AFL?
Or vice versa. And we preview the big games of round 19. It is going to be a big round again. I'm Linton and I'm in the city of Padang in West Sumatra.
And I'm Eddie J in the heart of Sydney. So, Lintang, how has your week been?
Oh, it's been a bit hectic, but I often find myself sort of looking forward to a cooler season, which will never come. That's a reality of constant summer, everlasting summer. Oh, there won't be any autumn or winter. And, when you're trying to remember certain things, hang on, when was that? Was that last winter? No, I never had winter.
Well, hopefully that winter will arrive for you. But in the AFL this week, we had games all over the place in all sorts of weather. So it was very sunny in Sydney. The games were played in northern Queensland, played in Brisbane, Adelaide, Melbourne, of course, and Western Australia. So there was a lot of rain in certain parts of Australia and there was a lot of sun. So yeah, it was a very strange weekend, but let's get on with the football. There were quite a few big games in round 18, weren't there, Lintang?
Yes, talked about last week that, as we are getting closer to the business end of the season, the results itself are becoming a bit more predictable and certain sort of shapes are forming. But we're still getting this mini upsets, mini boil over and thrillers. And one of the, games we liked was the Geelong playing against Adelaide. We talked about it as maybe a dress rehearsal for this year's grand final.
Well, the big thing that I found was that Adelaide are a very, very good team. They've ironed out all of their chinks in their armour and they're finding out new ways of winning the game. So Geelong are a very, very good team. Don't get me wrong there. They're a very good team, but Adelaide just ran all over them. They treated them like an under-12 team. Not that they won the match by a great margin, but just the way that they pushed them aside and won the game by 23 points.
Yes, last week we talked about Cats have 9 lives and some of the games this year, they won by a skin of teeth, so to speak. But this game, I think, against Adelaide, they were completely outplayed. Adelaide obviously targeted Cats' engine room, Joel Selwood and Patrick Dangerfield, and they did a great job.
Oh, they did a very, very good job. But the great feature of this match was that it showed two things for me. That Adelaide, as far as I'm concerned, are the team to defeat for this year. And Geelong, along with Greater Western Sydney, have dropped off the mark. And I think Geelong have dropped off quite drastically.
Yes, I was impressed by the Adelaide's Rolly Sloan. People don't mention highly about him, but he was a bit like Joel Selwood. He was just a little kid bouncing around and he was sometimes ragdolled and, but he just jumps back and goes at it and I was very impressed.
Well, I was very impressed with him as well, but we started developing a saying at the beginning of the season for opposition teams: stop Sloan, stop Walker, stop Adelaide. And I think opposition teams are still trying to introduced that tactic, but it's not working anymore because Adelaide is such a good team. They've got a spread of players and talent in other parts of the ground that if you do stop Sloane or Taylor Walker, it doesn't make any difference. Someone else will pop up and fill in the gap. And that's why I suggest that Adelaide are looking like the team to beat for this year's premiership.
Yes, the other players impressed me from that game was Crouch brothers. As you said, their opposition target the Raleigh Sloane, but then the Crouch brothers just stood up and they just played brilliant football. And their forward line, they are not relying on Tex Walker, just him, or one player like Tom Lynch or Josh Jenkins, and they could, or Eddie Betts. Multiple number of players can kick multiple goals, and I think they're playing a very, very good football, and I am pretty certain that they're going to go very deep in September.
And I've got a question for you. Which team in the AFL would you say are the masters of the comeback, and when they've got their backs to the wall, they tend to win a game?
That's Collingwood. That was brilliant. The way they came back in the last final quarter against the West Coast Eagles was just brilliant. Classic. And, they haven't got anything to play for other than their pride, or, some players want Nathan Buckley to keep on coaching or whatever reasons. But their finals hope is, all gone. But they played, the way they came back was just brilliant. On the other hand, the West Coast Eagles, they're not a finals player. They may make it to a top 8 still, but they won't go any deep into it.
Well, we can never say what will happen in this crazy season, but West Coast, they did just fall apart. And they did play in Melbourne, they played at the Docklands, and as we've discussed before in the program, West Coast have got a travelling issue. When they travel to Melbourne, they don't win a game, generally. Their record is much better at the Docklands, but not by much. And we said that this might be a problem for them in this game. So West Coast were playing Collingwood. They were 24 points up, 5 minutes into the final quarter. Teams should not lose from that position, but they did. I suspect that what did happen was that they were starting to think about the plane trip back to Perth. They were thinking about getting on the bus to Tullamarine Airport. They were thinking about which food they'll order on the plane, whether they've got enough leg room, are they flying first class or economy, and it started playing on their minds quite obviously.
Yes, in that final quarter, Collingwood kicked 5 goals for, while keeping the West Coast Eagles to single goal and 2 behind. And most significantly, Josh Kennedy, he was just a monstering goal sack. Collingwood defender for 3 quarters. Josh Kennedy kicked 2 goals each in every quarter. That makes 6. But he was goalless in the final. So, whatever reasons, they probably were thinking about, going back home and, started thinking about, what to do on the plane. Yes, you are right.
Now, we will talk about Alastair Clarkson coaching 300 games in the next segment, but things have gone a little bit crazy back in Perth, where there's quite a few media commentators calling for Adam Simpson to get the sack. Now, he's the coach of West Coast Eagles, and I've not seen a coach play on the ground for many, many years, but it's surely the responsibility of the players.
Well, the players play footy, but, it's coach's job to remind all the players that, we've still got one more quarter to go. We can't drop off our, intensity, keep an eye on the details. And that's the coach's job, to keep the players focused. Not just Simpson, but every coach in the AFL should be reviewed at the end of the season, if they're doing a great job or not. And certainly the way they went down, West Coast went down, was just, not good.
And another player that I'd like to point out for Collingwood is Daniel Wells. He was recruited by Collingwood at the beginning of the year from North Melbourne. There were a couple of question marks over his fitness, but he seems to be the lucky player for Collingwood.
Yes, he has had a few injuries this year, but when he is playing for the Pies this year, the record is 6 wins, 2 losses. And sure enough, this is another game he was playing, and the Pies won. So I predict as long as he's on the ground for whatever shape or form, Collingwood have a better chance of winning.
So even if he has a broken ankle or a broken arm, they should still play him.
Exactly. And we said the same thing about Josh Kennedy, but I think his charm went out.
Richmond against Greater Western Sydney, they played a fantastic game in the wet, and it seems like Tigers can swim after all.
Yes, and it shows also it's a classic 8-pointer, and Giants started very well. They had first 3 goals and led by 20 points at the opening break. So they started well, but when the rain started falling, Giants were falling too, or the Tigers stood well, and they kicked 6 goals in a row and kept the GWS scoreless for quite a long time.
Well, I'm not sure if that's the only reason why Greater Western Sydney lost and Richmond won, but let's listen to this incident.
There's an extraordinary high number of calls there, really, isn't it? There's another one. Oh, Toby Greene has given it up.
And want to be physical and want to support his teammate, but just went about it totally the wrong way and threw a little left jab there right onto the jaw of Alex Rance.
Really?
That's a horrible kick.
The Greater Western City had a free kick on goal. Stephen Johnson was going to take the kick. Alex Rance infringed. Kick was only about 30 metres away from goal, and it would have been a sure goal for the Greater Western Sydney. They would have been 4.5 goals up. But Toby Greene came in, he remonstrated with the Richmond defender, Alex Rance, and he punched him in the jaw. So that free kick, which would have been a certain goal, was reversed. Alex Rance for Richmond took the free kick and kicked the ball away. What can you tell me about that incident?
Well, there was certainly a free kick, and they should have just taken it and kicked the goal and focus on the ball. But I do understand how Toby Greene felt, and he was playing for the teammates, and he was no one else went to remonstrate against the Alex Rance, so he did that. But he just went a bit too far. It is good to show that, hey, you can't do that. We're the great team, and we can't just be pushed aside. That's fine. But Toby Greene has to learn that fine line between, showing a bit of aggression and actually getting booked and sidelined. I mean, he got 2 weeks now, and he missed so many games this year, and that's costing the Giants many games.
Yes, well, it seems like he was doing it for the team, but ultimately he wasn't doing it for the team. And we've mentioned quite a few times before that Toby Greene is an excellent DJ. My feeling is that he was thinking about which disc he should be spinning at a Melbourne nightclub that night, and he lost a little bit of control, and as far as I can see, he actually lost them the game. Now, it's a bit harsh to pin all of that blame on the one player, but it was a big turning point. And AFL is all about momentum, as you would know, Lin Tang.
Yes, and, the GWS came back a bit later, but it was, by then it was too late. And what we found out from this game is that the GWS is no good at the MCG, the home of footy, where the grand final is played. So GWS, even though they may make it deep into September, but ultimately they won't be any good because the final game is going to be played at MCG. But I think it's not fair that GWS. This was second game this year that they were playing at MCG. How could you get used to the ground?
Well, you will never get used to a ground if you're only playing there twice per year. What Greater Western Sydney should be trying to do for next year is organise the fixtures so that they play at the MCG every second week, or even every week. Why not?
Yeah, I do agree. And the other worrying sign for the Giants is that they have not won for 4 weeks, even though 2 of them are draw. But it still means that they are winless.
Yes, they have been winless over the past 5 weeks, and it's good to get into a habit of winning, because winning is a habitual thing, and it's also not too bad of getting into the habit of the draw. And they did have 2 draws in a row, but that's semi-acceptable. It's 50-50. But if you get into the habit of losing, that's not a good thing. So they need to get onto that winners list as soon as possible.
Yes, I do agree. And on the other hand, Richmond, even though it was in the wet, their spine, the structure was very, very... now it looks so good now. Cochin and the Martin in the middle, Rewald on one end kicking goals, and Alex Rance holding it tight. So they've got the spine. And, we've been saying that, we had a doubt. We have had the doubt for many, many weeks. Is Richmond good enough? And I can say it now that they are looking good.
Port Adelaide against Melbourne. Melbourne gave Port Adelaide a thrashing, and for me it confirmed one thing that we've been talking about all year long. The Port Adelaide are the flat track bullies.
Yes, it summed up very well by the Port Adelaide's coach, Ken Hinkley, after the match. He said, "We didn't seem to enjoy the fight or the contest and got steamrolled a bit on the inside." So they have got mental issues playing against the quality opposition. I mean, it may be a bit too premature to call Melbourne as a quality side, maybe. But Port Adelaide, yes, has got the problem.
Now, there might be a lot of listeners out there saying, "Oh, you people, Lintang and Eddie, all you talk about is Port Adelaide being flat track bullies. Where's your evidence?" Well, I'd like to point out that I do have evidence, and I've got a breakdown of Port Adelaide when they've played teams that are placed 1 to 9 on the ladder, and their record at the moment is that they've played 9 games and they've only won 2 of those 9 games against the top 9 teams, as opposed to games that they've played against teams that are placed between 10th and 18th on the ladder. They've won all of those games. So that's obviously evidence of being a flat track bully.
Yes, and that shows they've got a pretty easy draw this year, and that's the reason they're where they are now. They had sort of matches against less quality size more often, and in those games Port Adelaide just pounced and savagely destroyed them. But when they were playing against the top sides, they just falter.
So they're the big games that we wanted to feature from round 18, but there were a couple of other interesting points from other games, and there were a few big goal kickers as well. So Ben Brown from North Melbourne, he kicked 6 goals. Cale Hooker for Essendon kicked 5 goals, and Callum Sinclair for Sydney kicked 5 goals as well. So, and these are big players as well. It was good to see the big players kick the big goals.
Yes, I was very impressed by the Sinclair's goals and his general games. He was just monstering against the Jake Carlisle, and the way he marked and kicked truly. Callum Sinclair. Obviously, he was replacing injured Sam Reid, and he wasn't expected to play that well. And he did play well, and he grabbed the opportunity, but it causes a selection headache for the Swans. There are so many good players, and Kurt Tippett kicking goals in the reserves and knocking on the door. So Sydney has got a bit of a headache, and it's a headache they would like to have.
So you're listening to The Protected Zone. You can subscribe to us on iTunes, and you can also listen in on SoundCloud or YouTube, or go to our fast-growing website, theprotectedzone.com. Up next, we look at long-term coaches and then cricket.
Clarkson. His first as coach of the Hawks.
When you start the season 0-3, and it's so easy to think that your season could be gone, especially when you're around 4 games against the benchmark of the competition for the last 5 or 6 years in the Brisbane Lions. But we've got genuine belief in the direction we're taking is the right direction, and to defeat a Brisbane side must give them enormous confidence that they can match it with some of the cream in the competition.
They should enjoy every minute of this victory. A team effort right across the ball.
Ryan Franklin and Ruffhead are going to be great key forwards for us eventually, but all today has done is renewed the faith in the direction that we're taking and given the young guys some confidence that they can match it with some of the better teams in the competition.
And I think they were very well coached today. I think Alastair Clarkson and his match committee did their homework wonderfully.
300 games for Alastair Clarkson. That's a long time to be coaching. And someone pointed out in the media last week that there are 2 types of coaches in AFL. The ones that have been sacked and those that will be sacked. So what can we say about Alastair Clarkson?
I don't think Clarkson's going anywhere soon. The way he's handling the games is just brilliant. He's a coach that everyone wants to emulate. And fair enough, his assistants, many of them ended up coaching other teams now, and that shows his influence. He's probably not well known as a player, but you don't need to be a good player to be a good coach. Or probably the other way around, looking at the history of failed former stars, Michael Voss, James Hird, and there's still question marks on Nathan Buckley. They were, top players, but top players don't necessarily make a top coach. As we kept saying, you don't have to be able to play footy to coach well.
Well, do you think that he will be like Robert Menzies and retire at the time of his choosing, or will he be turfed out like Tony Abbott was?
I think he's going to be there for a long time, even longer than Robert Menzies. And, great Menzies had the war in between. So, Alastair Clarkson could have a war in between. And it goes on for, 27 years or, 30 years.
Well, he could be there for a very, very, very long time. And as you mentioned before, he's an excellent coach. He's actually had quite a few coaches come out of the Hawthorn area as well. So he's like a coaching machine, but he's also a coaching incubator. I think something like 6 out of the current AFL coaches have come from Hawthorn.
I'm not surprised that there will be all teams in the league, former, assistants and of Alastair Clarkson. He's just brilliant. The way he reinvented Hawthorn this year is just amazing. Early in the season, everyone said, Hawthorn's in rebuild, but it didn't take very long to bounce back. And now they're playing good footy and very threatening, very professional. And all the young players just matured so quickly and they're playing good footy.
I say I don't like cricket. Oh no, I love it. I don't like cricket. No, I love it.
Cricket and AFL. So for those people that are aware of the history of the AFL, they'd understand that AFL was invented in its contemporary form by Tom Wills, who was a famous cricketer. Now, there is a lot of debate as to whether it was actually stolen from the indigenous game called Marn Grook. I believe that it probably was, but historically it's attributed to Tom Wills, who was a cricketer. So I've heard recently that there are some cricketers that have moved over to AFL. What can you tell me about this?
Yes, last week Alex Keith made his debut for Adelaide, and he was a former cricketer for Victoria. He was not in the Shield side, or he certainly wasn't a Test player, but he was in the team playing 2020, I think. And so he was, a professional cricketer, but he decided to try out footy. Obviously, he has played footy before, but chose to play cricket. And then he realised, I might be better off playing footy. And he played very well. He was very impressive in his debut game, and welcome to AFL.
Now, it seems like quite a few AFL players do play cricket. Now, I'm not a cricket fan, so I don't know that much about the game, but it's not that common for players in the AFL to reach the top and also be a cricketer that reaches the top as well. So why would that be? Is it a cultural reason, or is it skill-based? Are there any crossovers between AFL and cricket?
I think to start with, they play on same ground, so you're used to the size of the ground, even though the cricket and the footy are quite different game. But there used to be a lot of players who play both games. Now, fair enough. When it was invented, it is said that the whole idea of Australian rules footy is to keep the cricketers fit during the winter time when cricket was not played. If you look back the history, there are quite a few players who played both games. Players include Jeff Marsh, they're Test cricketers. Jeff Marsh, Simon O'Donnell, Jamie Siddons, Max Walker, Graham Wood, Tim Zora. Vice versa, they're the Test cricketers who played footy, but champion footballers like Craig Bradley, Darryl Baldock, Earl Spalding, they used to play cricket too. And often it is, sometimes financial decision. Used to be footy pays better, so a lot of, players chose footy. But these days, with the advent of 2020s and, cricket's being played all year round, while footy is played only during winter. So there's more money to be made being a cricketer. That may affect the decision.
So you're listening to The Protected Zone on iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, and on our website, theprotectedzone.com. Next up, we look at the crystal ball and preview a big round 19. Round 19 is the pointy end of the season, and it's becoming so pointy that it's starting to cut into our fingers. What can you tell me about round 19, Lin Tang?
Well, the Friday night match between Hawthorn and Sydney, it looks like the top game this round. Even though Hawthorn, 12th and hardly any chance of making it to the finals. But their form, current form is, you can't ignore. Alastair Clarkson has done a great job turning around, and they are running out of time, but they're threatening, and they're having a big say on the makeup of the finals. And Sydney has been winning. They won, 10 of 11, last 11 games or something. And you have to remember that one loss is against Hawthorn this year.
Yeah, so it should be interesting to see what happens there. And I'd like to point out that it's a replay of the 2012 and 2014 grand finals. And it's also a replay of the 1987 qualifying final played at the MCG. So there's so many different ways that we can interpret this match. But it is a very big match, as you mentioned. And you did mention that they're probably out of finals contention, but AFL players are very, very competitive. Like, it doesn't matter what time of the season it is, or where the game is, or what the circumstances are. They still want to win the game. And I think that Hawthorn will play incredibly well. But there has been a little bit of a habit over the past few seasons where Hawthorn tend to win games against Sydney when they're played at the SCG. but Sydney tend to win games against Hawthorn when the game is played at the MCG.
Oh, where are we playing this weekend?
Well, this match is being played at the MCG.
Right, so you reckon Sydney will play better?
They probably will play better. They really are on a roll. I've not seen this sort of roll in all of my AFL watching experience, but they have won 10 games out of the past 11. This is after starting off with 6 consecutive losses, 7 if you count the grand final loss from last year. So it's quite an amazing turnaround. I've never seen anything like this before in my life.
Yes, they're in red hot form, or red and white form. We often hear people say that you can't keep on winning and you got to lose. There's a game you have to lose just to keep the players, motivated. I mean, if you get complacent ahead of the, time and stuff, that would be the worry. And Sydney surely don't want to, get that sort of mindset happening at this time of the season. You gotta have a game that you have to lose, and I suspect this could be a danger game. And Hawthorn it still has got a mathematical chance of making top 8. Sydney could afford losing to Hawthorn, knowing that they want to face them in September.
Well, I've got a funny feeling about this. It is a milestone match for Alastair Clarkson. It's his 301st game of coaching, and I think that Hawthorn will win this game.
I think Hawthorn will come out winning.
Another big game to be played on the weekend, and it's Collingwood versus Adelaide. Now, it's a similar sort of game as the Hawthorn versus Sydney game in the sense that Collingwood are outside the top 8. They've probably got only a very small chance of getting into the finals. Adelaide are a top team at the moment. But throughout the season, Adelaide have struggled a little bit when they played at the MCG. For example, when they played against Carlton a few weeks ago, they only won the game in the final 3 or 4 minutes of the game.
Yes, those teams, interstate teams, have less experience playing at MCG, which is not fair. But that's where the grand final is going to be played. So Adelaide has to get used to it and got to get into the habit of winning at MCG. That's where grand final is played. And as I said, Hawthorn will have a big say in the makeup of top 8 and finals teams. Collingwood have a similar sort of influence on the makeup too. After this week playing against Adelaide, they will face Port in round 21 and then Geelong in round 22. So and in the final round, Melbourne. So Collingwood may not make it to top 8 themselves, but they can defeat any of those teams and knock them off from the finals list, or just get them down to the 7th or 8th instead of 4th or 5th. So Collingwood hasn't got much to play for, but the club's in turmoil, some kind of turmoil. They lost the Gary Pert, who served the club for 10 years. And Buckley's position is still, discussed week in, week out. So a lot of, negative things happening off the ground. And they lost, 2 key players for injuries. So they're maybe back in that sort of framework. Okay, we'll show you how to play, when everything is against us. That kind of mentality.
Well, I'd like to point out that Gary Pert is the CEO of the administration of Collingwood, so he won't be playing on the field, so that's all fine. In the same way as Eddie Maguire won't be on the field, so that's good as well. I think the key situation here is, will Daniel Wells be on the ground? If Daniel Wells is on the ground, he's their lucky player for 2017. If he's on the ground, Collingwood will win. It doesn't matter if he's there for 1 quarter or half a quarter or whatever the case might be. Well, if Daniel Wells plays, Collingwood will win.
Situation now win. Push for a change of atmosphere. I can't go on, so I give in. Gotta get myself right out of here.
So we'll just have a look at the quick tips for the rest of the games. In other matches, it's North Melbourne against Melbourne. And we've got a little bit of a statistic here, but North Melbourne could be headed for their first wooden spoon since 1972, and that's before Ron Barassi coached them.
Yes, sort of battle at the top is intensifying, and so is sort of bottom side, North, Carlton and Brisbane. They're fighting for wooden spoon. And the way Brisbane went around last week, I think they would miss out winning wooden spoon. So it's down to a North versus Carlton, I think. And the North, they've got all sorts of problems. Their ruckman is not there or, invisible. And the body language is not good. So I tip North to win the, wooden spoon. So North, this week has got a big game against Melbourne. And Melbourne, they're winning, they're rolling, they're in good form. But I'll go for Melbourne.
North Melbourne getting their first wooden spoon since 1972, that would be quite an achievement. So let's see if we get there. Greater Western Sydney against Fremantle. Some people have been questioning whether Greater Western Sydney will actually make the finals.
Indeed, the way they are going around for the last 4 or 5 weeks, they're winless. And it's amazing they're still sitting, in third or, thereabouts. Because they played so well in the early part of the season, it could be a sort of typical example of peaking too early. And they're sort of, stuttering towards September. And losing Toby Greene this week and a few more injuries, it's anyone's game.
But they're only playing Fremantle, so I feel that Greater Western Sydney should win this game.
Fremantle could boil over.
Port Adelaide against St Kilda. We did talk about Port Adelaide being the flat track bully, and we backed that up with statistics. St Kilda, could they be part of that territory where they could be on a flat track and be bullied?
Well, St Kilda is very disappointing. The Jays, the team full of Jacks. The way they went down to Sydney last week was nothing but disappointing. You could say Port, see them as sort of easy prey and, just pounce on them. I can see that. Port Adelaide has got a habit of, mauling the lesser size, and St Kilda this week is an easy target.
Well, it is being played in Adelaide, so I'm going for Port Adelaide to win this game.
Indeed, I'm for the Port.
Gold Coast versus Richmond. It's another game being played on the Gold Coast. And Richmond, they played fantastically last week. They defeated Greater Western Sydney in the wet. Will they disappoint us again this week against the Gold Coast?
I think from here, Richmond, after showing that they are a real deal, I think they're going to go totally professionally. I think they're going to just pounce on Gold Coast.
Now, just because something has happened in the past, it doesn't necessarily mean that it will happen again, but we did say that Richmond were the real deal a few weeks ago, and then they were destroyed by St Kilda. Today, we've said that Richmond are the real deal. Do you think they'll be destroyed by Gold Coast, or do you think they've learnt their lesson?
Last week, I was very impressed by the sort of centre corridor structure, and that's hard to knock off. Gold Coast will target those key position players, but they're strong. They're brilliant last week, and of course, Richmond being Richmond, could happen. But I think this week Richmond will stand up.
Richmond for me. Carlton against Geelong.
That's an interesting psychology at work. Carlton, are they going for wooden spoon or not? As I have talked about in the game between North Melbourne versus Melbourne, Carlton, are they going to aim for wooden spoon honour? While Geelong last week was a bit disappointing game against Adelaide. So Geelong has to, come back and prove the world that they've still got some lives left. They may not have 9 anymore, probably 3 or 2. But Geelong, on paper, they're too good for Carlton.
Yes, I agree. Geelong actually have a very good flat track record this year. Against the flat trackers, they've played 10 games and they've won 8 of them. So they've got an 80% chance of winning. Geelong for me as well. Western Bulldogs against Essendon. It's a mid-table battle. Quite often mid-table battles are exciting, and this could even be the match of the round.
Yes, Essendon, eyeing for top 8, and Western Bulldogs last year's premier, playing badly, still have got a chance to make it. So a lot at stake, and if the Dogs can sneak into top 8, like 7th, they may start believing again, and peaking at the right time.
Well, 7th is the key position on the ladder, and I'd say that whoever ends up 7th will be the premiership favourite. At the moment, it's Melbourne. They were there in that position last week, so who knows? Maybe if Melbourne drop out of position 7 and Western Bulldogs get there again, they'll be in a chance for this year. But Essendon, as far as I can see, are too much of an exciting team, and I think they'll defeat Western Bulldogs.
I'll go for Essendon.
Now, the final game of round 19, and this is a little bit of a graveyard shift, but it's West Coast against Brisbane, being played at 4:40 on Sunday afternoon. Most of us would have dropped off by then, but yes, it's the match. For me, it's a little bit of a yawn match. What's your feeling about this game?
I disagree with you. Brisbane, the way they're playing, I think, it's quite exciting. Obviously, as a team, they haven't got much winning chance, but the young players have got so much energy, body language to like about. I think they're going to be a really good team. Maybe not this year, but next year. They're the force. A lot more exciting than Carlton. And West Coast, they've got the sort of reasonable team and the reasonable talent, but the way they went down in the final quarter against the Pies last week, it's just so bad.
Well, quite often that sort of performance in the final quarter, you will take that into your next match as well. So the game is being played at their House of Pain, which is Subiaco Oval, but they've actually lost quite a few games there this year.
Talk about them as a home boys, and they're only good at home. But their home's going to be destroyed, or they're going to relocate. So they will lose the home, and I think their season is online this weekend. If West Coast loses this match, bye-bye to 2017, and that could happen. That could happen this weekend. West Coast Eagles going down against Brisbane.
Well, it could happen. I've got a feeling that West Coast has psychologically and emotionally already vacated Subiaco Oval, even though they will still be playing there on the weekend. They're still thinking about their brand spanking new stadium over across the road at Perth Stadium in Burswood. So, as I mentioned, they've psychologically and emotionally vacated Subiaco Oval, but I think they've still got enough talent to defeat Brisbane.
Yeah, are they serving half-price pie again?
No, they're not serving half-price pies anymore, but in the Western Derby a few weeks ago, we nominated a meat pie as the player of the match. We could see that happening again in this game, but let's see what happens. You've been listening to The Protected Zone, where we talk about everything that relates to AFL, all the interesting things and the left field ideas, absolutely everything. Each week we've been presenting an AFL team with a new team song, but we've run out of teams to give a new team song to. We've done 18 so far. So what we've decided to do for the rest of the season is provide a song which summarises the round. So Lin Tang, which song do you think we should look at for round 19?
Oh, it's hard. 19th Nervous Breakdown. Oh, is that 9th? 19th Nervous Breakdown, or The Pretenders for Port Adelaide. I don't know, Eddie. You're good at choosing the song. Surprise us.
Well, I'm thinking of going for She's Lost Control by Joy Division. That's a good old song from yesteryear. And the thing that I was thinking about was Toby Greene, because he did lose control at the end of the first quarter against Richmond. And I think this is a suitable song for this round, don't you think?
Yes, for Toby.
Thanks for listening in. We'll see you next week, and we'll go out with the Joy Division, She's Lost Control. See you later.
See ya.
Confusion in her eyes, it says it all. She's lost control. And she's clinging to the nearest passerby. She's lost control. And she gave away the secrets of her past and said, I've lost control again. And of a voice that told her when and where to act, she said, I've lost control again. And she turned around and took me by the hand and said, I've lost control again. And how I'll never know just why or understand, she said, I've lost control.